Snafu is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Snafu, where the situation's normal, all fucked up. This is the podcast where we tell you stories of true crime, true mystery, and truly fucked up shit that happens to us every single day, and then we just forget about it. So we decide we remind you. I'm the Baroness de Risque.
And I'm not going to have a nickname, so I'm just Corey.
I'm owning it. That's mine. It's mine now.
All right, you keep that. You can keep that up.
So we just really wanted to just get straight into it, but instead we have to talk about a couple things first. And what we wanted to say was, in our last episode, we had asked people to send us stories so that we could start doing something monthly, which we want to read your snafu stories. So basically, everyone has those moments in their life where you survive something, or what's that crazy story that you tell everyone at the party? Like, what's that one thing that happened to you?
That I built a barn once.
But we asked you guys to email us and send us some stories because we're going to start reading those at the beginning of every month. And you guys have listened, and we're getting some really wild stuff. So I can't wait to start reading those out loud to you guys. We're definitely going to give you a shout out. You can say a little hello to somebody else. But we're trying to still make that more interesting. So if you have any better ideas about how to make that better, let us know.
So yeah, you can always send all your ideas over to us on our email at snafoodpodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram.
Yeah, and that's just going to be once a month. So get your story in, and hopefully we can get you into this first episode. But you won't make it if you don't write to us soon.
Yeah, so make sure you send us something, then we'll be able to read it. Possibly in conjunction with our own story, depending on how many we get. But it's definitely always interesting because I kind of lived the most boring life growing up. So I get to live vicariously through all you guys and having so much interesting stuff going on.
And then the other thing we wanted to do was thank Sarah, who listed a really awesome review for us on iTunes. And I don't know, I guess I freaked Corey out because he caught me screaming into a pillow, but I was just super excited. So
yeah, I don't like when she does that. When I come around the corner and something's going on.
I'm just screaming into pillows, yes.
For the reason of reviews and, being rated on iTunes, I guess that's always a good thing. It shows that our hard work is being seen, and Sarah did make a point that we kind of do a lot of different research and bring stories that she hasn't heard in a long time or at all in most of the podcast episodes she's heard. So
yeah, I can't thank you enough. That made me so happy because we really try. But anyways, that's really the only things we have to announce this week. The rest of it's just us enjoying Florida winter with the windows open most of the time. And
yeah, it's a lot different because, back home my dad's got to deal with all the snow and the cold.
And we're just grilling out at night. It's fun.
We sat outside last night and grilled, so that was always nice.
We're going to go ahead and get into the story. And today's story, our theme, both of them have to do with fires. But I think they're really different fires.
Yeah, they definitely are going to be different fires. I mean, I only know a little bit about the story that Shannon's going to tell just in passing. And, for me, growing up, there were a few fires in town, but I never knew anyone who was really influenced by them or who affected by them. So for me, it's all this kind of nebulous thing that you see on TV and in movies, and it's never affected me. So
yeah, no, I have the complete opposite reaction to that. My town, I knew a couple of girls who lost their homes to fire because a lot of the homes that we lived in our town were very old and the wiring wasn't always great. And to realize, they lost everything was one thing, but to realize we could have lost them was another. And, burns are no joke. And to be honest with you, that is the last way I want to die, is getting burned.
Yeah, and, on top of just, the whole physical aspect of it, being burned and everything, just losing everything you own. I don't even own all that much. I can fit everything I have in a car. But, having my cats or the dog, losing a pet or something like that.
Yeah, there's just some things that are irreplaceable, but what's even more irreplaceable is a life. And it's just a really awful thing. It can be uncontrollable and it could be devastating, but people know that. We don't have to explain that to you guys, but let's go ahead and get into the stories.
Today I'm going to start us. I'm going to kind of dive us into a more recent story. It's actually, currently in the news. These are the things that kind of pique my interest. Shannon's great with all this historical information, but
I'm a nerd. I don't even want to live in this time. I want to go back.
I'm not a big history buff. Well, for some things, but not all the things. So my story is, going on right now. We're getting to see the wheels of justice turn in real time, which...
I think that's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
to see it, like, as it's happening.
You haven't seen how slow the wheels of justice actually move, though, have you?
No.
No, very, very slow.
Every day, no. You get arrested, then you go to court the next day.
Not quite. Not with this story. So this story starts with the American dream. A lot of us kind of grow up in school and we're taught that, in America, you can become anything you want. You can start from the bottom and work your way all the way up to the top. And, it's great because that's what this country is built on. We were a country of immigrants who showed up here after, being kicked out of any good country. I mean, if you watch the movie Stripes, Bill Murray puts it into good perspective. But, we kicked out of every decent nation, and you can come from anywhere else and be the lowest of the low and work your way straight up to being...
I think we love those stories.
President. Yeah.
Like the immigration stories of coming here with, a dime in your pocket. But if you work hard, you can become anything you want to be.
Yeah, and that's why you see people trying to move into our country every single day. And it's great because that's what we are. That's what we're built off of.
Okay.
And so we're going to talk about the Caneiro family. I might not be pronouncing that properly. So I'm just going to go with all their first names.
Sounds Italian.
It's Spanish. Oh, so we're going to be focusing on... I mean, they're over there. Italian and Spanish, they're both romantic languages, so they're related. So we're going to be talking about Keith and Paul Caneiro. And, they both grow up in Brooklyn. They're sons of Spanish immigrants. And Keith is going to be the primary focus at the beginning of the story. Now, he's a fanatic in the new and exciting world of technology because he's growing up in the 70s and the 80s. This is when computers are becoming their... Well, I can't really...
everybody has an Atari, and computers...
are really, actually, literally a big thing.
Yeah.
Keith graduates in the early 80s from his high school, John Dewey High School, and he starts moonlighting, slinging burgers at a fast food restaurant, and working as a janitor for free at a technology company.
Dude, that's old school.
That's definitely the old school way of doing it. Nowadays you have to go back and you have to go to school first, get 300 different degrees, work part-time or work full-time as an unpaid intern while trying to survive.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen in this world.
My friend used to tell me if you really wanted something bad enough, you could just go there and prove yourself by offering to work for free. He was like, I don't care if you scrub toilets. At some point, they're going to see that you want this, and they're going to give you a shot.
And that's almost literally what Keith did, because he's working as the unpaid janitor, and he eventually gets the shot that he's looking for. He gets to be moved up from janitor to actually being a paid salesman for this technology company. And, that's great, because he's getting himself in the door, and he's doing kind of what he wants. But Keith always has his sights set on something bigger and better, and always progressing towards the future.
I mean, you should, right?
Yeah, so by 1986, like I said, he got into this company really early in the 80s. He actually leaves the company and moves to a different one to start training workers and the use of some new technologies. Now it's probably archaic technology because the 80s, and it's 2000 something or another. And then he eventually leaves this job as well to found a company called J. Martin Consulting with his brother. And the company started in Brooklyn, and his first hire is actually his older brother, Paul, who's a year his senior, and sets him up as vice president. The company, J. Martin, is actually both the brothers' middle names.
Yeah, you can't really name it after each other and then not hire that guy.
Right, and that's kind of where it's going. And, a lot of the family friends have always seen that Paul and Keith were always together. They're always a perfect, helpful brother relationship. They're always there for each other. Keith is actually Paul's best man, his wedding in 1991. And, that's the same year that Keith actually moves the company out of Brooklyn into Jersey. And it's Jersey, so I don't know why he did that, aside from it's probably cheaper.
Sounds like, it would cost a lot less money.
Yeah, but you're in Jersey, so...
The Garden State.
Yeah, and Oil Petroleum State, I guess, according to that one movie there. How was that movie? Miss Congeniality. Yeah, my brother used to watch that a lot.
Way to call your brother out.
I'm going to. And this company they started, and they're working, and they get a lucky break really soon. J. Martin actually lands a Citibank as a client to install computers and networks for that giant banking corporation. I mean, everyone on this podcast...
Yeah, I know Citibank.
In the Western world, at least, knows Citibank. And, Keith is quoted saying that, if I worked 10 days a week, I would never be able to finish the projects that I have.
So he's not a math guy.
No, he's not.
I think that he was making a point.
He's obviously making a point.
Okay.
But, they're drowning in work, and they're actually kind of excited for that. At this point, Keith needs Paul more than ever, and they expand the company very quickly. They expand and pull in some new clients, including Chase Manhattan and JP Morgan.
Damn.
So they're going for these big bank companies, and they're setting up all sorts of different workstations and networks. By 2001, the technology business had grown from 4.5 million annually and had 26 different employees.
4.5 million a year. That's pretty awesome. That's nothing to like snub your nose at.
No, it isn't. I mean, and like I said, 26 employees kind of seems a little low in my head.
Yeah.
But if you're installing software, it's just you need people to monitor it, and then you run and you bring in maybe a consult or a contractor to help out. And the brothers continue to expand the company. Keith actually started a secondary technology company called Square One that landed a contract deal to design and install a computer network with 41 workstations, which, according to my class I had yesterday, a workstation is actually just your desktop setup, and a sales system for American Family Immigration History Center at Ellis Island. So, he's coming in, he's grabbing not just these big name banks, but he's also grabbing one of the
most amazing places in New York to ever visit.
Most prolific locations in this whole fucking country, and helping set up their computer system.
So I know that you haven't been there, but I have, and I think I was there using his technology system then, which is really cool. But basically, Ellis Island is a major point for immigrants to come through and register to become Americans. Back in the day, you'd have to get processed. And so when he set up that program, you can go to that building. It's like walking through history. They've done a really great job at setting up like computer systems and like old photography. So you could actually feel like you might have seen what immigrants coming into the country look like. Like for us, it's hard to even imagine because like back then, a lot of people who were coming from other countries, they were still very like in their cultural like demographic, like they were wearing their clothes from their like home country, and it was like traditional clothing back then.
And
like
people,
their
names changed. Like I know a lot of families in my hometown, they're all Polish, so they all got their last names changed.
Ours got worse. Like we came over, and for some reason, like I have a very Scottish last name, and we freaking added more letters to it. Why?
Because my family. Part of them came over from where they came over from, but I've actually seen the boat registration, but I know my names I think stayed the same because it was simple and boring.
Yeah, but anyways, it's a really awesome place. So that's a huge deal to be the person setting up that computer system.
Yep. And eventually the brothers take these two companies, Square One and J. Martin, and move them to Asbury, New Jersey. And they actually start a third company, which is a pest control business, when they move to Asbury. And, life for the brothers just seems to keep only getting better and better.
Yeah, they're like millionaires.
Paul's married at this point. He moves into a beautiful house in Ocean Township. He's incredibly proud of his home. He has 2 daughters. And he ends up taking the reins of the pest control business rather than the technology companies. The technology thing is really Keith's passion.
Yeah.
And Paul is the kind of guy who does the day-to-day operations. There's other reports, and I know I'll probably run around and say it again, that everyone sees Paul in the office more often. Keith ends up kind of not coming to the office all the time. Paul likes being there day to day, and he's happy to come to work.
Okay.
So taking over a pest control business as opposed to these technology firms that he doesn't necessarily know everything about is more his speed. And Keith, meanwhile, he buys a large piece of property in 1998 on Willowbrook Road in Colts Neck, New Jersey. And then he puts a $1.5 million mansion on it.
Oh, yeah?
We got Paul, who's got a large house, and his brother, the president of the company, puts down this mansion that's, 5,700 square feet, has 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. I don't know why you have an extra bathroom.
They all do.
I
That's for guests, so you don't have to
poop
get disgusting like
okay.
other people.
And they've also got a pool, which, it's...
Why? It's New Jersey.
Exactly, it's Jersey. It's going to be cold more than half the year. And this house is only about 50 miles from New York City, which means he never goes in the city ever, and 12 miles from Paul's house. Keith marries his beautiful wife, Jennifer, who's a college graduate of University of Albany.
That's a good school, right?
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, it's Albany. It's a state capital.
Oh, yeah, go her.
And Paul is actually a member of the wedding party, but he's not Keith's best man. So there's a little bit of a difference between the way the two brothers interact with each other. So who knows why Paul wasn't Keith's best man, but that's what happened. And it seems that in 2004, Keith ends up getting a black mark on his record. He's charged on 4 counts of assault.
Oh my God.
But 3 of the counts were dropped, and a victim who is not named was being paid by Keith about $1,100, and all the cases are kind of gone at that point.
Okay, so what's Keith gonna end up doing?
Well, he's going to get himself back into school
Okay.
and get his life on track. You know, so he goes back to school. He ends up getting his bachelor's degree. And with Jennifer, he has 2 kids. Jesse, who's their older son, he loves Legos, World War One. He's like following in his father's footsteps. He loves technology and building things and learning. And their daughter Sophia, who's a few years younger than Jesse, she's big into gymnastics and likes baseball. However, it's the Yankees, so take that as you will.
I won't. We'll teach her. Mets, girl, Mets.
And recently, Keith graduates from Columbia University with a Master's of Science, and he starts receiving certifications from Harvard's Business School web platform.
See, I can appreciate that. This guy, clearly he came up from very little.
Yeah.
According to him, I guess. But, you go from just graduating high school to building this huge company, and then you still go back to school. That's the signs of someone who just wants to make themselves better.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Keith's life is pretty awesome, He's got his family, he's got this mansion, he loves his jobs, he's educating himself, he goes to the gym 3 times a week with his wife. He's doing all right. Paul, he's no slouch either. He's got this big house, this beautiful family, and like I said, he's seen at the company's offices all the time, so he's always the face. He's sometimes more the public face, or at least what the workers see, and they love it. He does have a blip in his life, though, around 2013 or 2014. He gets into a pretty gnarly car accident, and he ends up undergoing multiple surgeries.
Ugh.
And ends up walking with a pretty distinct limp and using a cane. So,
at least he's alive.
Yeah, there is always worse ways to walk away from a car accident.
Yeah, right.
Not walking away.
Still sucks. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, it definitely does, and I could feel for him. And then on November 20th, the pretense of this happy, successful life for both these brothers kind of gets burned away.
What happens? Obviously fire, but come on.
Fire happens.
Yes.
So, just before 5 a.m., an unidentified woman called the fire department from Paul's home saying, "I have no idea where the fire is. Our alarm just went off, and our house is full of smoke, but everyone's outside." In those early morning hours, Paul, his wife, and his 2 daughters stand horrified outside, watching their house burn. A neighbor reported that Paul was telling people that it could have been a gas leak. He's got tears in his eyes. He's totally distraught. He says he's, quote, "I'm in complete shock. I can't believe this is happening to me."
Yeah.
And firefighters, they show up and they quickly go to work, putting out 2 fires on the exterior of Paul's property. One was at the back of the home, while the other had started at the front on the attached garage door.
How would your house go on fire like that? On 2 different points?
I think Slender Man.
No, he just takes children into the forest. He doesn't set fires.
Prometheus, then, whoever. It quickly becomes clear to the firefighters that this has been a man-made fire. And their suspicions are concerned when police find gas canisters behind the garage and behind Paul's house. And when they're around, they smell that distinct smell of gasoline as an accelerant to start these fires.
Damn.
They end up actually turning this around and arrest Paul himself on suspicion of arson to his own home. And he's being taken to the police department early that afternoon once they're done fighting the fire and they have charge to bring him.
So, what, insurance? He was just burning down his house?
I think we're going to get into that in a little bit more, so let's hold that for a second. Hold your questions to the end, class, please.
Okay.
And then we've got a second fire reported in town, and this is at Keith's home, and this is about 1:45 in the afternoon. But not just a fire, there's also the report of a dead body. It happens, right while Paul is being brought to the police department. And Keith's neighbor's groundskeeper, this is the kind of neighborhood we're living in, where people have groundskeepers and home assistants.
So it's like Boca Mansions, got it.
Yeah. He rushed to his employer's house, alerting them to a possible fire, and that's when Keith's neighbor runs over to the house to see if the family needed help. And he's calling 911, saying that there's fire. He also says that he's seeing the body of a man laying down. And he walks up to him, he's stating that there's a lot of blood and that the man's been shot. There's a whole 911 call. You can look it up on YouTube. And that's when he realizes it's a dead body. And he's like, oh, God, there's a dead body. He sees it, and it's Keith. And unknowingly, he's trying to see where the family is because Keith's family was very well loved. The neighbors had paddocks for horses, so the family's always going over, petting the horses. And they like the family. They're just kind of a staple in that neighborhood. Unknowingly, though, when he opens the door to the house, he sets off a terrible response, and the home is filled with smoke. So, according to the reports, there's a smoldering fire in that basement that when the door got opened and fresh oxygen blew in, it jump-started the fire and just kind of set the whole house up in a blaze.
Oh, my God.
And, the house goes up in flames, and this is going to take the firefighters hours to put out. 3 more bodies were retrieved from the house, and they'd later be identified as Jennifer, Jesse, and Sophia, Keith's family. Jennifer was found shot and stabbed, and both the children are also reported to have stab wounds. And it's just, you can't get ready for anything like this, especially if you're a firefighter.
Wait, so you're saying, okay, so obviously Keith died because he was shot, but
Keith's
they
shot.
Didn't die from a fire.
No, the reports are showing that the stab wounds and any shots to Jennifer, or if there were any other unforeseen shots to the kids because the bodies had to be pulled from a fire, that there was something else. It wasn't the fire that killed them. It was some sort of trauma from stab wounds or gunshot. It wasn't the fire that killed this family.
Oh my God, those poor little babies.
So, like I'm saying, these kids, they're great little kids. And now Paul is claiming, while he's in, the police department, that someone's clearly out to get him and his family. These same people had gone after Keith and Paul's families.
I mean, his house was on fire and he's at the police department.
Yep. So, New Jersey police had Paul in custody over the arson of his own home, but once the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, so FTA, and Explosives, that company.
Sounds like a really fun department to work for.
Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, I think is the full name, but, FTA, right? Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I just want to do the explosives part.
I know you do.
And the alcohol part.
They determined that the fire had...
and the fire gun part. Never mind, I want to go work there.
You want to go work for all of it, yeah. Anyway, this bureau determined that the fire at Keith's home was also arson, and the charge against Paul were tacked on. Paul is being held at the Monmouth County Jail on the charge of 4 counts of murder, the charge of setting Keith's home on fire, so aggravated arson, counts of possessing a firearm with a purpose to use it unlawfully against Keith and or Jennifer, and the possession of a knife with intent to use that unlawfully against Jennifer and her children.
Wait, so they actually found the weapons?
No, I don't. There's no confirm. I don't have anything that's confirming that they found these weapons, but they're tacking this on to Paul's sentence to try to get him for whatever they can get him for. Paul's attorneys are Mitchell Ansell and Robert Honecker, and they say that Paul adamantly maintains his innocence, as well as the fact that he would never hurt his family.
Okay, so he's saying he didn't do it.
And it kind of falls in with what everyone knows. Everyone sees Paul as the leader of this family. He's like the patriarch, and he cares deeply about all his family. His brother, his niece and nephew, his own family. And, Paul doesn't post bail, and he elects to stay at the county jail. And although this is just speculating here, Paul's a business owner, and this makes him a man that has the means to run, and maybe they legally, can't release him because he's got some money to himself. And
Did we do a story like that recently where, you couldn't release them because, they just have so much money? If they have the opportunity to run, not saying that they would, but, how could you stop them?
Right. They have the money. They could easily disappear.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that Paul doesn't necessarily run. He's not posting bail. He's staying there to let the wheels of justice turn, I guess. Reporters are wanting to figure out what type of motivation could have caused this. And they heard that, from the police department, it could have been the killings could have been financial in nature. Like I'm saying, Keith, who's the president and the younger brother, has this $1.5 million mansion. And Paul, who's the vice president, has what on all reports are just a large house. There's going to be some obvious discrepancies in the way the money is being distributed here. And that could be a cause for this kind of killing. The police end up launching a financial investigation into the businesses and financial dealings of Paul. Among all the evidence that they've seized, there's cell phones, computers, and other electronic devices. So there's all sorts of something that's written down in text or however you have it, like text, emails, some sort of written form. I
mean, that's pretty typical. Somebody, at this point in time, most people are stupid enough to put it on their computer or their phone.
Yeah, like I said, this is 2018 that this happened. So it's literally... last week, essentially. Meanwhile, reporters have been digging deeper into what everyone had to say about the two brothers, and it turns out everything wasn't as wonderful as we're all seeing from the outside initially. According to neighbors, Paul was restless because he was a big fish in a small pond, who was enamored with money, but never lived up to what Keith had.
I mean, yeah, you did say that. He's got nice stuff, but it's not as nice as Keith.
Right. And, friends are also claiming that after Paul's car accident, he wasn't ever really the same person. And lately, things between the two brothers, they were off. Like I said earlier, the last few years, the two styles of handling the company was very different. Paul was always at the office, and Keith was kind of handling the technology side of the business and mainly dealt with these Fortune 500 companies, the banks and Ellis Island. And then it also comes out that Keith had been talking openly about cutting ties with Paul.
Uh-oh.
Keith had become restless and had been talking about his desire to keep trying new things. He wanted to go work for a large company as its chief information officer. He's always trying to work upward, and that's something that we've seen with Keith. So he wants to try to take the next step and see what he can do. That family friend, Demetrius Patamianos, it's a Greek name. He's shocked at this. He's the one who was saying that it was always Keith and Paul together. He admitted that Paul had been frustrated, but Demetrius didn't think he was at the point where he'd hurt his family. He thought,
so he even knew, you're right. Keith must have been saying this a lot. And
yeah.
I mean, at least Paul was showing the signs of being frustrated.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've got. But, Demetrius didn't think that Paul was at the level of frustration where I'm going to kill my family. So,
okay.
There's a lot of different concerns here. And yeah, as soon as Paul's name had hit the headlines, someone else from his past had popped up claiming that Paul was exactly as violent as he seemed. So we've got this gentleman, Mark Bostrom, who says he worked for the brothers back in 1991 and claims that during the time the men were working together on one of Citibank's office buildings, and they were having tons of issues getting, the network to function properly. And Bostrom, being one of those somewhat nerdy IT guys, had come up to Paul, who was bending over a set of blueprints and jokingly asked if the, quote, not work would be going up soon. I kind of laugh at this because it's such a nerdy tech joke.
Get it? Network, not work?
Yeah, the not working network. Yeah, it's a not work. It's just a contraction. He says that, Paul then looks at him while grabbing a screwdriver and said, you could have a fatal accident back here, while slowly moving the screwdriver up and down in a stabbing motion.
Oh my god.
And I don't...
such a corny fucking joke?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's trying to continue the joke, but by the sounds of the reports, Paul was being very serious about possibly hurting Mark here, so much so that Mark had gone off to the police and reported the threat on his life.
Damn.
So this is something that's been in the...
Mark's a snitch.
Yeah. And what happens to snitches?
They get stitches. Yeah. Evidently from screwdriver injury.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But so far, that's what the public knows. It seems the defense and the prosecution are working very hard at keeping the case legitimate so that nothing can interfere with it. They're doing their best to keep everything tight and under wraps. That way nothing gets out and influences the case. Paul had a court appearance set for Wednesday, November 28th, back in 2018, but had been postponed till the 30th, as Paul's attorney had requested that so they may review some new evidence. On Monday, December 31st, a Monmouth County Superior Court judge decided to seal the affidavit of probable cause. This affidavit reportedly contains detectives' findings in the case and would include why the county prosecutor thinks he has enough evidence to arrest Paul and charge him with murder. So if that gets out, obviously it's going to skew everyone's idea. The judge seals this affidavit until February 21st, 2019, so it's not open right now. The affidavits are usually public, but February 20th is the date set for a grand jury to decide whether or not to indict Paul after hearing all this new evidence.
Which we talked about a lot when it came to the Fatty Arbuckle case, about how you have to have a jury indict you and just say, yeah, we think there's enough evidence to at least take this to court.
And that's the thing. We don't know what these 16 paragraphs in the affidavit might include, but it's possible that includes vital information to the murders. But right now we can't let that out because it does start to skew things. Everyone in this country is innocent until proven guilty beyond a shadow of doubt. That's why we have the jury. I'm just punctuating it, all right?
Okay.
So if indicted, this case is expected to go to a criminal judge in Monmouth County Superior Court, and it must go to trial within 270 days after being indicted. But according to prosecutor Gammacinio...
Neat. I like the North.
It's Italian.
You'll have fun names.
It's Italian, so I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. Prosecutor G, the trial will most likely not go to court until 2020, because like I started with this, the wheels of justice turn incredibly slow.
God, that's a really long time to fucking sit in jail.
Yeah.
And not know, he could be totally innocent and he could be sitting in jail right now.
Yeah, and that's the problem of this. They have to hold him because even if they put him under house arrest, he owns 3 successful businesses and might be the one who all the money goes to with the death of his brother. He could easily disappear. So, like the Michelle Martinko case that we did a few episodes back, and if you guys haven't heard it, go listen. This case is being updated in real time, and as we hear more in the news, we're definitely going to be throwing it in as interjections into our future episodes. But, like we're saying, Paul is technically innocent right now. Yeah, he's under arrest for suspicion, but
that's the great part about America is that you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to give you more rights to your name. Like, a lot of countries don't see it that way, and you're guilty until proven innocent, and shit can get real bad.
Yeah, and you get chopped up.
But, I mean, his family, like, if he did this, that's insane. Like, all over money, which we see people do all the time.
And that's what happens. This could easily be over money. If you have a family that's like, they're doing great, and then as they're getting older, they realize, oh, I could have done something a little bit more, or I should have worked this differently.
Well, or why set fire to your own house with your own family inside? Like, why didn't you just run?
And that's the thing. That's probably what's throwing it off to be, making it seem like someone is out to get the Caneiro family. Like, if you have two fires at both the president and the vice president's houses, he could have, if he did it, he could have been doing it to try to set things up off his trail, or maybe there are people out to get them.
I mean, it's New Jersey. Maybe it's the mafia.
Yeah.
The Illuminati.
You moved out of New York City, so the mafia's going to chase you into New Jersey?
What if it's hackers? Because of the technology company.
Maybe. I'm going to go with no on that one.
Okay.
But, maybe there are there's something in either of the brothers' past that's coming back to get them.
I mean, the thing is it's really sad that those people lost their lives.
Yeah.
But it seems like these guys didn't have that squeaky clean background that you'd think they would.
Yeah, I know.
I'm interested to see how it turns out. I'm looking forward to that. But, I don't know. I'm going to switch modes here and, let's go over to my story. And
all right, yeah, what do you got for us?
I have to go ahead and put another warning out there. I guess I do this all the time. I like those really gruesome, awful stories because I feel like we're making a point.
Yeah.
So I want to take us to my all-time favorite city ever, New Orleans.
I like New Orleans.
Oh my God, New Orleans is the best. If you guys have not been, seriously, you got to go.
Yeah, you definitely have to.
It is just it's the home of jazz. It's got the French Quarter. It's got just everything. The food is so good. Oh my gosh. Honestly,
buffaladas. We need to get you one of those next time we go.
One of my last meals, if I could ever actually know what my last meal would be, it would be a steak from an Italian place in New Orleans. It's been, I swear to God, it's probably been 10 years. And every time I think about this steak, my mouth literally waters.
I promise there's better food in New Orleans than the steak. You just have to be able to...
Not be an uncultured swine, I guess.
Yeah, you have to be able to eat seafood.
But, I just love everything about New Orleans. Generally, the people are amazing. It's, it's the South.
Aside from the people that want to scrabble your face.
Okay, yeah. You do have to watch out for the homeless because we were walking around the streets last year and we crossed this one lady just yelling in the middle of the road at some guy, and she literally was like, I'm gonna scrabble your face, which is just...
Still have no idea what scrabble anyone's face means.
It was the best insult I've ever heard. I legitimately was like, shit, I don't want her to scrabble my face.
Yeah, we're gonna steer clear of her.
Yes, and so she got her way.
Yeah.
But my story, it's gonna take place in New Orleans, and it's gonna take place in the 1970s. And right. New Orleans in the 1970s is a lot different than the New Orleans we know now. Still a party town, but the French Quarter at this point is kind of more of a slum. And what the city's trying to do at this time is turn it around into what it's going to become like it is now. The French Quarter, it's a tourist attraction. Everybody wants to be there. It's a really cool place. A lot of old buildings. You can walk from bar to bar with your cup in your hand.
Because they're all owned by the same person, but yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. I actually like not having to stay in a bar until I finish my drink. I like to take my drink and walk around and see. I'm a people watcher. It's so much fun. And every bar you go there, you're walking into this bar, bam, there's another, brass band playing. Bam, Here's a jazz band. Bam, the music there, it's the heart of the city, in my opinion.
It really, you go to New Orleans for three things: music, food, and booze.
Yeah.
So.
And titties.
Yeah, I think that just stems from the rest of the culture of it, but.
You add all of them together, you get titties. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
But another thing I didn't realize about, because this is something that's going to be big about my story, and I want to start from the beginning. My story is going to center around an incident, one of the biggest incidents to ever happen in gay history.
Oh.
And, I know I'm straight, I know you're straight, and so we don't have that experience to talk about what it's like to be in the gay lifestyle. I've been learning a lot. So what I'm going to say, I guess, is I'm going to do my best to explain the things that I've learned.
All right.
And I'm hoping that I've done a good job. And if I haven't, please let me know. I'd love to be educated in how I could actually know things better. But I'm just going to do my best.
Yeah, and that's like the thing, both of us can sympathize because we're not terrible human beings, but we can't really empathize with the plight that people have to go through.
Yeah, honestly...
so we're not... What we're trying to get out of this is that we're not trying to be accidentally offensive. If any offense is had, it's accidental by any of these two hosts.
Yeah, it's not meant to, be mean to you guys. And on top of that, this is, to me, a really important part of their history, but it might be too gruesome for some people, and this is definitely not a story for your children to listen to.
Snack food contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised, ×2.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just get into it. So, on Sunday, June 24th, 1973, we got crowds in the streets of New Orleans, like always.
Yeah.
But this is a gay pride weekend. And by that, I mean in the 70s, they didn't even have gay pride weeks yet. This is more of a very small gay pride weekend. It's really just in the quarter.
You haven't been down there for Southern Decadence Festival, have you?
Hell no, but it sounds amazing. How much butter is brought down?
Oh, no, it's a gay weekend. They've got parades of gays, and it's awesome.
It sounds, no one dresses better. But look, the point is, this is what's going on that weekend. It's a big weekend. It's a fun weekend. There's people out celebrating. And I want to talk about being gay in the 70s. From everything I read, it's a very closeted lifestyle. A lot of people, even in big cities like New Orleans, couldn't really actually live outside of the closet because their lives and their livelihood would be put in danger. We're in South Florida, and it's a very big area for the gay lifestyle. For you and me to walk down the road right now in Boca or Miami or anywhere in South Florida,
Miami.
In the Keys, it's very common to see same-sex couples walking around, holding hands, just living their lives happily.
Well, you've got Wilton Manors, and they've got a city council, and I don't know how many are on their city council, but all but one of them are gay on the city council. That whole city is built around that culture, which is great.
I honestly, in my own opinion, I don't think your sexuality really should depend that much on who you are, how you live your life. But then after doing all this research, it's it is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because for some people, they couldn't be who they were at all. And so being closeted meant that this was secret. This was done behind doors, and nobody knew. Family, friends don't know. Work doesn't know. And it actually, according to some of the podcasts that I was listening to, it kind of had a reverse result on how men would behave. They would actually be really macho guys,
If they're closeted?
Yeah, you're basically, hey, how do I not have someone call me sensitive and gay? Well, I'll just act extra macho or extra into women, let's hide. That's what people do when you're trying to hide something.
You overcorrect, essentially.
Yeah, but they had every reason to, because at this time in history, we have undercover cops who would come up to gay men and they would try and solicit them. And it was a regular undercover sting operation that they did in gay sections of town. And it basically treated gay men like they were prostitutes. By simply admitting you were gay, you could get arrested. And then you would actually be charged with a charge that they would call a crime against nature. Why does the fucking government have a say in how you have sex?
Yeah, and...
I know why, but at the same time, that's, to consenting adults, what the fuck?
Yeah,
what's the problem?
If you're not hurting anybody...
And it really comes down to religion and how much religion at this time still had a hold of government. We weren't really separating church and state. And so, if you got arrested for being gay, there could be huge ramifications.
Yeah.
You honestly could lose your job. Like, if somebody found out you were gay, your job could just fire you, and there's nothing you could do. But even worse, your home could be taken away. Yeah, like, literally, at this time, if a residence was occupied by 2 suspected gay men, it could be declared a house of ill repute and then seized with little or, like, no due process.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, so, living your life, buy house. That's crazy.
Yeah, that definitely is.
So, to me, that makes all the sense in the world why you might not want to come out.
Yeah.
Why you wouldn't be willing to risk that, like, you'd rather hide the person you really are than lose everything.
Yeah, in order to survive, people do a lot of different things.
I mean, I didn't know that it was that bad. I've grown up, luckily, in a time where it's a lot. It's not the best it could be. We're not treating everyone equal, but
no, we're really not.
Honestly, there's a lot of people, I think, in this day and age who are growing up with not realizing, like, what it was really like what people just a couple generations ago were fighting against and why. But we're gonna get on that. We're gonna go to a building at 141 Charter Street in New Orleans. It's a club. It's a building that's from, like, the 1840s. And again, New Orleans is a huge old city filled with, brick and mortar and wood buildings.
I know we're going to do a big old story one of these days strictly on New Orleans and its history.
Oh, so. Probably a couple. New Orleans is just a wealth of information. But a big thing, like, before Katrina, I think the scariest thing you could say in, like, New Orleans was fire. Because that city's literally burned down, like, a couple of times.
Yep.
But, it's the 70s, and there's a building, and there's basically a bar downstairs, a bar in the second floor, and then some empty apartments right now on the third floor. And the second bar on the second floor, it's called the Upstairs Lounge, right? And it's not technically a private bar. Like, you could just come up and enjoy your time there.
Yeah.
But it's a secret gay bar, and it's set up specifically to be a little bit more private.
So it's like a speakeasy.
I mean, kind of. I mean, here's the thing with me. If I pass by a stairwell and know there's a bar upstairs, I'm going up the stairwell. Like, there's no stopping me.
I know that.
But this kind of setup is made to kind of prevent that. Normally, you can kind of see upstairs and know, I see people. The way this building is set up is, like, there's the bar downstairs, and then there's a heavy door. And you can open that door, and there's basically a wood staircase. It's covered in gross, probably 1970s carpet, and you look up the stairwell, and you would have to turn and go into another door in order to get into the upstairs lounge.
Yeah.
So basically, if you looked up those stairs, you just see 2 big heavy doors. There'd be one to the lounge, and there'd be one to lead upstairs, like a big heavy fire door. And so that made it a lot more private. It made it a place for gay men to be able to go, and once they were upstairs, they were with friends. They could be themselves, and there wasn't going to be someone passing by lower on the street who would happen to look up and see what they were doing. You just see that it was a bar. You wouldn't know that, according to a lot of people at the time, this would be a place of ill repute. Ill repute. My eyes are rolling in my head. Sorry. But again, on this particular day, it's a Sunday, and there's a lot of people actually at the bar because there's a lot to celebrate. Again, this is a gay weekend, gay pride weekend. Obviously, the gay club is going to have a lot of people.
Yeah, of course.
And there's men and women. I mean, it's not strictly only for gays, although I did also learn...
you can be gay and be a woman. It's just...
Yeah, but actually I learned at this time, it seems like in the homosexual world, like, those 2 groups really seem to keep themselves separated. Honestly, it seems like a gay club was more just for gay men, and there would be lesbian clubs for lesbian women. I think nowadays maybe they mix it more. Again, I don't know. But I guess at that time, like, there wouldn't have been that many women there.
Yeah.
There were some. That's the point I guess I'm trying to make. And so on top of, the Gay Pride weekend, you also have a lot of people celebrating the 4-year anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And I learned that it was like an anniversary of the police trying to do a sting, like, in Greenwich Village of New York.
Greenwich Village?
Yeah, that one, the one I've never been to. And basically, all throughout the country, like, a lot of gay groups started to kind of have riots or rebel against this. They were finally standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
And so that happened 4 years ago. This was the anniversary of it. And, they were all, it's a gay pride weekend and it's the anniversary. Like, they're just celebrating. Like,
yeah, of course.
A little bit of, like, I can be me. And to top it off, like every other bar, on Sundays, the Upstairs Lounge would have something they would call a beer bust.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, basically you paid $2 and it's all you can drink beer and all you can eat
someone used
food.
the bathroom, right? Oh, that's the thing we did in college. We had it was a bladder buster nights where you showed up, you put like a $10 cover charge in, and all the booze was free until someone had to use the bathroom.
Someone or you?
Someone.
Oh my god, I wouldn't pay $10 for that.
So, well, no, I mean, everyone paid $10. You go in, and then everyone would start drinking for free until someone used the bathroom. And
so
then,
it lasted like 20 minutes, is what you're saying.
give or take, yeah. But there are those certain people that could get themselves pretty thrashed during that 20 minutes.
I mean, I want to go to this bar. $2, all I can eat, like all the beer I can drink until a certain point, like obviously.
Yeah.
That sounds like a pretty damn good day. And it was. There's about 125 people at this bar at that time. Mm-hmm. And then, happy hour ends, and obviously some people wander out. Like I said, this is a club bar area. Like most people do. They go from bar to bar. You get bored, you're gonna leave.
Yeah.
But the upstairs lounge, it isn't just some like ratty, bar where people come in to drink. Like it's more like a social club for a lot of these guys, because the way that this bar is set up, you would come up those stairs and you go, and the first thing you would see is the bar and these huge windows. It's an old building, so these windows are from like floor to ceiling. Gigantic. In the first room, they have a baby grand piano that they regularly play and sing to. The next room over actually has a stage in it. And right now, a lot of the patrons that are still at the bar, they're members of the Metropolitan Community Church, which is a church that had really just started up in the last couple years at that time. That's a pro-LGBT Protestant church. And, I think they started like in LA.
Okay.
But there was a couple of of these churches all throughout the country, and this was the Louisiana chapter. And so this version of the chapter was actually led by Reverend Bill Larson, who was at the upstairs lounge that day. And, so happy hour ends, you got the MCC there, you got about 60 people left, still enjoying their time at the bar. It's still a pretty packed bar. Out of the people who are here, 1/3 of those people are veterans. Again, this is 1973.
Yeah,
You've got veterans from World War II,
and
Korea, and Vietnam.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting to think about how many veterans would have been there. Just because I don't think a lot of people realize or even think about that when they're thinking about gays and gay club. Their mind doesn't go to veteran.
No, I don't.
But to me, those would have been hardened guys.
Yeah.
These would have been men I wouldn't want to fucked with.
Yeah.
And, they're just trying to be happy. So they're having their drinks. A lot of guys are circling around the piano because a member of the MCC, David Gary, he's there. He's a pianist. He's playing. They're singing along. And, at some point in the night, there is, one guy, there's one fight, at least. It's a bar. But at one point, a fight breaks out between a guy named Roger Dale Nunez, and he's incredibly drunk, and he's pretty much just pissing everybody off at this point. You know how bars get. You get that one guy, he's gone too far, and, honestly, nobody even freaking likes you at all. Why are you even here? And evidently, he provokes a fight with a guy named Michael Scarborough, who is a local son. He's a local boy, and he is the son of a Bales bondsman who, everyone knows. And Michael is a very masculine, muscled guy.
Yeah.
And Michael is not taking this shit from some drunk, so he just stands up and he lays Nunez out, and he just punches him in the jaw, knocks him to the ground. Nunez is laying on the ground, moaning. He's being like a little bitch.
Soccer player, yeah.
And so the bartender, Buddy Rasmussen, he hops over the bar, and a barback helps him. They both grab him. They drag his ass out the door, drag him down the stairs, and toss him into the street. He's so drunk, they can't even keep serving him. Dude, you're pissing people off. You're out of here.
He's not your problem anymore.
Yeah. Well, Nunez, who had just been moaning on the ground a second ago and is now getting dragged out, he starts muttering stuff, and there's a couple people who say they heard him, but basically Michael thinks he heard him say, "I'm going to burn you all out."
Oh, great.
And another guy thinks he heard him say, "I'm going to burn this place to the ground." The point is there's a disgruntled drunk who at least 2 people in a very busy bar heard him say the word burn.
Yeah, that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, so they toss him out. problem solved. Who gives a shit? Everybody goes back to enjoying the music. Reverend Bill Larson, he's like talking with a couple of people from the MCC. They're planning to have a fundraiser soon, so they're discussing how to set that up because they want to have a fundraiser for the local crippled children's hospital.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, literally, this is a full-on church, and this church actually, before they moved to hosting like their time at the Reverend's house, they had actually used the upstairs lounge and on that theater that's in the second room as a place to hold, like, yeah. So a lot of these guys who finally had a place to go celebrate their religion also felt really closely to the upstairs lounge because they had already been doing the same thing at times in that place.
Yeah.
And Reverend Bill Larson was actually still using the upstairs lounge sometimes in order to hold like marriage unions because at this time it's incredibly illegal and he's not supposed to be doing it. But he wanted to allow people who were in a committed relationship to show the world that they were in a committed relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's where he would hold these times, you know, they'd do the union, and then bam, you're already at somewhere where you're celebrating with your friends over the love you just showed, you know? So he's there, he's talking about that, and, you know, everyone's just having a good time. It's pretty early in the evening, and around 7:58, a buzzer goes off in the bar.
Uh-oh.
And, it's a normal thing. So,
is it? Okay. So when I'm hearing buzzer, I'm thinking fire alarm.
No.
I'm hearing burn, so...
So I thought this was cool. Again, this is 1973. This is before cell phones, obviously.
Yeah.
So the buzzer has two purposes at the bar. You can either use the buzzer when nobody's really there to say, hey, I've got your deliveries, like, here's your drinks. Like, it's a notification. But it's also the second floor, so at this time, if you were going to leave the bar, you would probably call a taxi.
Yeah.
Because you don't have your phone, there's no Uber, you have to call a taxi. So what they would do is guys up there would call a taxi, and then you just spend your time up there drinking and waiting for your taxi to arrive. So when the taxi got there,
makes sense.
They would buzz, and bam, like someone come down, let you know your taxi was there.
Yeah.
So the buzzer goes off, and Buddy, the bartender we already mentioned, you know, Buddy hears the buzzer go off, but he's busy right now. Like, seems like he's the head bartender at the time, and he doesn't have the time to go get this. So, basically, he says something along the lines of, hey, can somebody go check that out? Like, see whose taxi that is. One of the guys, Luther Boggs, he gets up and opens the door. But instead of opening a door to a taxi driver, he opens the door to a huge fucking fire.
Oh, jeez.
So, a lot like your story, evidently someone had come along, people saw a figure, and they saw him put something on the ground at the bottom of those stairs, some kind of fluid, and then light a fire. This is 1970s. These are wood stairs. It's covered in gross carpet. It's a fucking bar. Mm-hmm. How many drunks have gone down this stair holding their cups?
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's squeaky clean.
Yeah, not at all.
And so what had happened was there were fire doors at the top. So there hadn't been that much, like, nobody had smelled fire.
Yeah.
Nobody knew there had been a fire because it had been just a small fire at the bottom of the stairs. Unfortunately, when Luther opens the door, it feeds all this oxygen down into the stairwell. Heat rises, fire builds when it hits oxygen. It basically turned into a giant fucking firebomb. Fire just lit up the stairwell, came into the bar, and everything just starts happening really, really fast. And so, like I said, it happening so fast, people at the far end of the bar, at the other side of the room, they say something along the lines of like, oh, somebody's lit a fire over there. You know, you're at a bar, you think someone's done something stupid.
Yeah, of course.
But honestly, like, the moment that door opens and the fire starts to come in, men start screaming. The whole room literally fills up with smoke. Like, nobody can even really see anymore.
That's intense.
I mean, it's just so fast.
Yeah.
And you just, like, every guy in there has just a couple of minutes to figure out what the fuck they're gonna do. One of the guys that was there, a World War II veteran, he literally explained it as it looked like fire from a flamethrower.
Jeez, that's not anything you want to encounter.
I imagine he said it because he's seen that.
Yeah, that's what I'm, if World War II vet's saying it, that's the last, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And now I want to talk about why this fire is deadly, and this fire is real bad, because there is only one fire exit, and it's the door Luther just opened.
Shows where the fire's coming from.
And there is a fire escape out one window, but the problem is every single fucking window has been barred with horizontal steel bars. Some fucking genius was like, I don't want people jumping out of windows, so let's put steel bars on this thing.
I mean...
And that's including the window that's supposed to go to the fire fucking exit.
Yeah, that's... That, like, I can understand bars on windows, but I can't understand bars on the window that's supposed to go to the fire escape.
No, I'm fucking disgusted by this. Like, this was a terrible, like, planning layout. And so what happens is this room fills with smoke and people panic, right?
Yep.
You've got a couple guys who literally go running through the fire down the stairs. They get incredibly hurt.
Yeah.
You got a couple of skinny guys who just have enough time to open the windows and squeeze through. And basically, it's just a fucking mess. Buddy, the bartender, he starts screaming instantly, follow me, come this way, come this way. And frankly, Buddy's a hero because he just starts yelling this and he's leading a group of guys. He goes through the second room and then Buddy starts messing with his keys and all of a sudden he opens a back theater door and they rush into the next room. And from there, Buddy runs and unlocks a hidden emergency back exit. Why, for the love of God, is the emergency exit hidden? I don't know. But he gets it open and he manages to get around 15 to 30 guys out. And they have to run across, like, the rooftop of the next building to even get down and, like, shimmy down to even get out. These are the guys who make it. Remember, we had, like, 60 people in this building.
Yeah.
And he's just saved between, like, 15 and 30 of them. That leaves about 30 more people to escape this fire. And maybe even more. And basically... one of those guys that Buddy manages to save is the assistant pastor, George Mitch Mitchell, for the MCC.
That was a good name.
Yeah, but the thing is Mitchell's partner, Luis Broussard, he's still stuck in the building. So he survived, but Mitch turns around and runs right back into the fire. He's not leaving his partner behind.
Yeah.
In the end, they did find Mitch and Luis. They died in the fire, and they were holding each other. But beyond that, a lot of the men basically ran to the windows. You know, there's a fire, there's mass panic. What do people do in a panic? They do a herd mentality.
Yeah.
Everybody's running to the windows to try and break out. Everybody's basically there, and they can't. There's all these bars, and what one guy says, Lynn Quinton, who had been there, he did manage to escape through a window because he happened to be skinny enough. A lot of the younger, skinnier guys, if they had the wherewithal, could get through those bars, and then they had to jump from a second story to the cement below. He literally claimed that passerbys caught him, and then he helped catch other guys jumping out. But he said, at one point, you had a line of guys, and there's just some people wouldn't jump. There's a moment in your brain, and some people just can't bring themselves to do it.
Yeah.
And then he says after that, there was no more time to get out. Even if there were some guys who wanted to get out, they couldn't fit through the bars, or they just no longer had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's really sad because these bars are horizontal. It's not like we're thinking about like
Vertical
jail cell bars.
Yeah.
And it almost does give you this feeling like you should be able to crawl through. Lynn said that he went to the front of the building, and all he could do was stand there and watch guys screaming at the windows as they burned alive.
Yeah.
That included Bill Larson. And I'm just getting upset because honestly, this story makes me so mad. So sorry, you guys. Basically, Bill had been trying to climb through the bars and he got stuck. And according to Lynn, he listened to Bill's last words of, "Oh God, no." And he burned alive. Cool. Sorry, I got myself together. Let's go. So, in the next window, beside him, 3 more men burned to their death, and Lynn said he could only watch. I mean, these were men he knew.
Yeah.
That day, 29 people died right there in that fire, and then 3 more people would die later from their injuries. The fire only lasted 18 minutes, but 18 minutes is a lot of time to
Especially
me.
in a fire. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in a place filled with liquor, a wooden brick building. They had no chance. This fire would actually mark the deadliest fire in New Orleans in nearly 2 centuries. And the fire department, they took a long time to get there. So, although the club was only 2 blocks from the central fire station, firefighters did quickly become stalled by vehicles and people in the street. So, they really couldn't get over there. And according to the firefighter Arthur Lambert, he tried to maneuver by steering the truck around on the sidewalk, but he ended up hitting a taxi cab and sending it smashing into a glass window of a furniture store. And one thing I can say for them is, according to Lambert, the deputy chief was behind them and he said, quote, "Don't worry about the fucking taxi cab, get to that fire." So eventually they did manage to get over to the fire, but according to the firefighter, the building looked like blowtorches. Like the flames are already coming out all the windows. It's a mess.
It's not good.
Right at that time, he says men could be seen struggling hopelessly against the windows. People in the streets were screaming for help. I mean, people were just in a panic. And according to Patrick Shones, whose family owned the funeral home that took in the burned bodies, he claims that a lot of the men in their last moments had taken out their wallets and thrown them into the fire specifically in order to hide their identities, knowing that they were going to die.
That's heavy. I can't imagine having to do that.
So, yeah. You want to hear something fucked up?
I think we just did. But...
A neighboring bar took this opportunity of so many people coming for a fire that he set up a bar in the street so you could buy a drink and watch the fire.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah. There's a lot of pictures from this fire. I mean, it's the 1970s, and if you look at the pictures, I'll tell you, we'll probably post some of them, but they're really awful. And in the pictures, you see a lot of men who are helping injured men. And when I took the time to look at these pictures after someone said, we have history right in front of us. And when you look at those pictures, they tell a story. And that story is that nobody was willing to actually take care of these men who were so severely burned. When you look at the pictures, you see a lot of really nicely dressed men. There's a black guy in flip-flops. Basically, right away you know that they are not EMTs.
Yeah.
They're either people who had been at the bar or they were bystanders who had been going out that night. Either way, I saw one firefighter with a victim. Everybody else was taking care of the fire, but where were the people who should have been there helping victims, helping burn victims of everything? There's a picture of a guy sitting on the sidewalk. He's got a blanket over his body, and I thought I was looking at shadows under his hands, and then when I looked at it, that was his finger skin hanging down, and nobody's helping them. So basically, I guess that's my speculation, is that nobody's helping them, and they had to help themselves. So once firefighters were able to get inside the building, they found a pile of bodies in front of the windows facing Chartres Street. So like I said, everyone had run to those windows, and the majority of the men who ran to the windows, that's where most of the people had died. They did find 4 bodies huddled together under the grand piano, and they did find a couple bodies in the stairwell. 22-year-old rookie Terry Gilbert, who was a firefighter of only 2 weeks with the department, he had recently just returned from a tour in Vietnam, and he said of the fire, "It was horrible. These people, they were literally roasted alive. When your skin is exposed to open flames, you just melt like candle wax. It's horrific. I don't even think anything could have prepared you for something like that. No one deserves to die like that." This is a dude who just came back from fucking Vietnam.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, "I've never seen something so terrible." Lambert recalled the chief saying, quote, "I'm not going to tell anybody that they have to do this, but there ain't none of us leaving until it's all done." What I'm going to say is these guys knew this was a gay bar. Yeah. You know what gay parts in town are. Yeah. You're not that stupid. And literally the fire chief had to threaten his own firefighters to do their jobs and clean up the bodies in this building because there were men there who were refusing to do so because these guys had been gay.
I don't have words for that.
Yeah. So what's It doesn't stop getting bad, you guys. This is just going to keep getting worse. And I got so angry when I was doing the research. And honestly, I'm hoping it makes you angry. I'm hoping it makes everyone angry. Because the thing, like, the fire's bad. But the fire, I'm going to say it right now, the fire wasn't like a homosexual terrorist act. This wasn't like the Pulse nightclub. This was just something really awful that happened. And then the things that happened after the fire, the way that people reacted to it, it's a shameful time in history. And we should remember it because those people should never be forgotten for their actions and what they did. And what they did is they left Bill Larson in that fucking window for hours. There are pictures. We're going to post one because you have to see it. Like, that should never have happened. I mean, they literally did that to him on purpose. And according to the Orleans Parish Coroner, Dr. Carl Rabin, he's trying to explain what happened in this fire. And he says it seemed like that all the people tried to get out of the windows that face Chartres Street. He said it was a mass death. Some of them burned to the bone. It looked like mass hysteria. It was a mass of dead people.
And for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with New Orleans, parish here is their equivalent of county, not like a parish church.
Yeah.
So the Orleans parish is like all the cities in New Orleans and all the cities around it.
So while a lot of people did die in this fire, a lot of guys did manage to get out. And like I said, they all had to get out mostly from above. So a lot of them had cuts. A lot of them had fractures from jumping out of the building.
Yeah.
And a lot of people came into the hospital with third-degree burns. A lot. Again, if you have even any doubt what it would have taken to get out of that building, you see the pictures and people's skin are just black bags.
Yeah.
That's how bad these burns are. But basically what this fire did was it forced the city to talk about a gay population that to this point they've been trying to hide because the city didn't want that. And honestly, they don't come out looking good at all. No. They turned a really ugly face and they did a lot of really ugly homophobic things. So basically the initial news stories about this fire even admitted, they didn't even admit to the fact that this had anything to do with the gay community. A lot of the articles, basically, they just stick to talking about how gruesome the fire is. They just refer to it as victims. A lot of them don't even fucking talk about them. They'd rather pinpoint about what an awesome job that the doctors and nurses are doing back at the hospital to work with victims. And yes, those people deserve credit, but you can't just sweep under the rug who this happened to.
Yeah.
The Times-Picayune, they talked basically about how fire codes needed to be updated. And that was it. They didn't even make it really sound like anybody fucking died in this fire at first. But Roy Reed from the Times, he was there within 30 minutes of the fire. He's, talking to people, and he gets his news story in so that it could be in the morning paper. And because he learned from Buddy Rasmussen that this bar served homosexual clientele, he placed that at the end of his article. And so he basically just outed everybody that had been at that bar. And what's worse is after it comes out that this is a gay bar,
yeah,
a lot of the articles just really start using really terrible and insensitive language in order to describe the events. It goes from talking about how awful this fire is to suddenly they're saying things like, "Oh, people were stacked like pancakes." And,
Our species is shit.
One guy's talking about how he was standing knee-deep in bodies and how the heat had been so intense. They were just cooked together. And, I get it. This was bad, and maybe, that's how you saw things, but that's not how you fucking describe people's deaths.
Yeah.
And, when locals were asked about this, one local woman said, the Lord had something to do with this.
Of course he did.
Oh, well, who gives a shit about random local people when you got the New Orleans chief detective? His name is Major Henry Morris. This is his quote. Quote, "We don't even know these papers belong to these people we found them on. Some thieves hung out there, and this was a queer bar." It might not sound as bad as as we think of it today, but back that day, calling a guy queer was like calling him a faggot.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't like something people have been able to take in hand and use it proudly. Like this was basically the same way as you would call a black person the N-word. And he basically was saying, like, I don't know who these guys are. They're all thieves and they're all gay, and who gives a shit?
Yeah, it's shitty. Like, I don't even have words for it. It's just, this is all, I can't even fucking deal with this.
And then, to top it off, while the fire's going on, and then right after the fire ended, you got all these reporters who want to get this story because it's a big story. So they start asking questions of victims who are in shock. Now, people who are in shock, you're not really thinking clearly, and you tend to answer any question that's being thrown at you. Like, you're just answering it honestly. Well, that's a problem considering a lot of these guys were closeted gays, and they were actually telling people their real fucking names that then went into news articles. And if you think that's fine, turns out one of the guys who was in the hospital for 2 weeks, he was a teacher. He got fired while dying because he died in that hospital of the burns he received. Instead of taking care of him, his school called him and said, "You're fired for being gay." So a lot of men who had closeted lives and then went through this horrible time, they were suddenly outed, and now this is probably the first time a lot of their families found out they were gay. Yeah. A lot of them were fired. A lot of them were kicked out of their families. Meanwhile, you know, people are just trying to take care of business. A lot of people are trying to take care of funerals. A lot of people are trying to deal with the bodies. And it turned out that most of the funeral homes in town refused to take in the bodies and deal with them. Only one funeral home in town bothered to let them in. Of the people who ended up dying, most of their bodies were claimed, but there were 4 bodies, 3 of which that were burned just like so badly they were unidentifiable. Because they had 90% of their body or over 90% of their bodies burned to like the 3rd degree. Those 4 bodies, since they were not claimed, were then processed and buried in a mass grave together in individual coffins in a potter's field for degenerates, for people of the city that would not be claimed. Meanwhile, in the following days after the fire, many of the local churches refused to allow survivors to hold a memorial service for the victims of the fire. New Orleans at this time is very Catholic, very, very Catholic.
Still are.
Yeah, still are.
At least open.
But they definitely said no to even having a service where people could go and pray to God and just try and heal, and they said no. Eventually, William Father Bill Richardson of the St. George Episcopal Church agreed to allow a small prayer service to be held on a Monday evening. This was not advertised. This was strictly a
come as you are,
like word of mouth kind of event. Like it was supposed to be private, and it was kind of supposed to be hidden, like everything else these men were forced to do. So on that night, they had about 80 mourners. And then the next day, Father Bill was forbade to let the MCC survivors use the church ever again. Bishop Nolan pulled Bill into his office, and he claimed that he received over 100 angry phone calls from members of his church and from the local parishioners. And, then Father Bill started getting hate mail in his mailbox.
Of course he did.
A man of God allowed people into a church to mourn the loss of human beings.
God forbid.
Again, a lot of the funeral homes refused to even bury the bodies. There was only one. And basically, it was crazy because the gay community had to go to local officials and beg for them to even make a statement of sympathy towards those who died in the fire. Something that in previous fires didn't have to be asked for. Yeah. Like, there had been a couple previous fires that year, and the local officials had immediately put out statements of mourning, but they refused to for this event. Bill Rushton, a journalist, he kept pushing for a statement, and literally no one at the offices would take his phone calls. He said it was hilarious to listen to the poor secretaries on the other side have to mix up continuous stories and excuses for why a fucking politician couldn't simply take a phone call and say, you know what, we should put out a statement of mourning. So yeah, so no statement was ever made, ever put out at that point. Meanwhile, the local community was acting pretty fucking heinously. And a lot of times of uncomfortableness, as we've seen on this fucking show, people make jokes. But it's the 70s, and these jokes are pretty awful. So at the time, a local radio personality, he was talking about the fire on air, and he said a joke to him. He said, quote, "How are we going to get rid of the bodies of 30 dead queers? Let's bury them in fruit jars." Another joke had been circulating was, did you hear the one about the flaming queens? I hope they burn their dresses off.
See, why are we... I hate our species.
I know. But you know what?
I can't fucking deal with this story anymore.
It's really awful. That's what people want people to remember, is that this was how much of a fight it was. And this is what we've conquered to get on the other side. All right, so basically what happens after this is we have a lot of police records. And police did go through and they made a really big effort in order to try and identify who was in these fires. Again, what happens with a fire is that a lot of the burns don't let you figure out who people are.
Yeah. And
you have to go through a lot of ways to even kind of maybe figure it out. So we never have like an honest to God. Like I said, there's still foremen in a pauper's field. Basically, they went to a man named Rusty Quinton who worked at the upstairs lounge, and he knew a lot of the regulars. And he provided a lengthy and detailed list of names, ages, places of employment, listing, one man, Larry Norman Frost, who was the bar manager at the Hotel Dauphine Orleans, who is suspected to be one of the four men in that big grave. Literally, you go back through history and his name just keeps popping up. So why is he one of the men who had to be in a pauper field? Like, why is he speculated to only be Larry Frost? Why aren't we saying he's Larry Frost?
Yeah.
A lot of the people, one of the gentlemen who had been at this club had been a dentist. And a lot of people who had been at this club had been his clients. So they had to literally use this dentist records, in order to identify a lot of these guys. And that's why we do have a lot of the names. So like I said, the police had to do a lot of things to try and even figure out who these guys were. Because like I said, there's that rumor that a lot of them destroyed their identities.
What really bugs me about this is that you have these people that were destroying their records, but in this day, it's gotten better. In this day and age, you can be who you want for the most part. It's what frustrates me is looking back on something like this where it's gotten better.
It's just frustrating to think that maybe some of these men have never gotten the recognition and they, remembered. Yes. What's worse is no one ever got arrested. Nobody ever got charged with this murder. Even though everyone, like I said, we have the quotes. People said, I heard this guy say this. One of the guys across the street at the hotel across the street had seen somebody squirting fluid, on the grounds. And that, a guy with the similar description to Nunez was described to going to the Walgreens, that's still right around the corner to this day, and buying 7 ounces of lighter fluid. The police even questioned Nunez, and they didn't arrest him. He ended up dying the next year from suicide. Yeah. But, the point is like nothing ever, it was almost like, oh, well, because it happened to these people, it doesn't matter. And then, by August 30th, 1973, investigation was ended. That was a rough story.
I did not like this.
I want to make
it needs to be told, but I did not like it.
Well, luckily for us, it's starting to get told. And there's a couple of books that came out last year and a couple of books coming out this year. And it being just the 45th anniversary this last year, you know what? The city of New Orleans is finally kind of stepping up. And I say kind of because I still call it fucking bullshit. So here's the thing. The mayor, she did celebrate the 45th anniversary with a memorial with people who wanted to come together and remember these guys. And, she's also set a team together to try and identify the 4 people who were in that grave. Now we hit problems. We're getting a couple of snags. The cemetery that owns that plot of land now says that most of their records were destroyed in Katrina. So even if we had records and they did enough to even try and memorize where these people were laid out, they can't guarantee it right now. What they do think is that they are in the New Orleans Pauper Cemetery in Panel Q, Lot 32. That's like the closest they're getting right now. One guy recently said we might have a little bit of news like coverage from 73 that we might be able to play, and maybe we can pinpoint from the background, try and get some landmarks.
Yeah.
So great, maybe we're actually going to do something awesome and figure out who these guys are. We have DNA. We have actually 2 names that have popped up out of the 4 in that grave. They literally said they really think Larry Norman Frost is in there. They also really think that a gentleman named Ferris LeBlanc is in there. Problem is that the city and the cemetery are arguing over money, so they won't fucking help each other. And you know what? That cemetery is bullshit. You should be decent human beings, and you shouldn't give a fuck about what the city owes you, and you should do something right by helping us figure out who these men are so that they can have a proper burial. One of them, he's a freaking veteran.
Yeah.
His family has been notified, they finally figured out what happened to him. They claim they never knew.
Yeah.
And now they know where he is, and they know he's in a pauper's grave. No, they want him to come home to California. They want him to have a full military service, like he deserves. That man fought for our freedom.
Yeah.
And we've treated him like trash. All 4 of those men deserve to have a proper burial. And New Orleans needs to get its shit together and do the right thing.
It does. It really does.
And that really brings it to a close. The mayor's doing the right thing, but we need more. And we need more people to know what's going on. And we need more people to remember this event. And, maybe it doesn't affect everybody's history. Like I said, this is more for the gay community.
It's American history, though.
But I didn't know about it.
No, I didn't know anything about this.
But that's why we need to get better. That's why, as people in 2019 and beyond, need to be better. We need to work together. We need to treat each other as equals. And when we see injustice, we need to stop just being like, oh, well, that was the past. Fuck that shit. You can fix the past. You can't change it, but you can make sure that we right wrongs and that we don't repeat it.
Yeah.
And, I'm sorry. This was a super emotional episode, and I'm sorry I got weepy, I guess.
I mean, it shows, we care about these. We're not just telling stories at this point. We're trying to inform everybody, and we both care so much about getting these stories out there.
And it's the whole reason I think I even started this podcast.
It really is.
Situation normal. It's all fucked up. And I know we can be better, you guys. I know we can. So yeah, I know that was a heavy load, but at least it's over.
Yeah.
So anyways, if you have any statements, if you want to correct me on anything, if I said something in the wrong way and you want to educate me, feel free to contact us at our email at snafood@gmail.com.
Snafood. The email is snafoodpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, see, that's why he always does that part. And then make sure you get your stories in now for our monthly special, because if you don't do it now, you're probably not going to get into the first episode. But we promise we will definitely get your story in at some point. And so far, they've been really fantastic and really, really fun. So until next week, we really appreciate it if you spread word of mouth. It really helps us out.
Yep.
Go on iTunes, give us a review, leave us a note. I read everything you guys send us, and honestly, I can't thank you guys enough. You've really reached out to us and said awesome things, and we're making great friends, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that what we're doing makes a difference. I don't know.
So thank you guys for sticking with us on all these, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.